Hello, and welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast, where we have real conversations about learning, leadership, and the lived experiences of nurses and healthcare professionals across the emergency spectrum. Each episode, we sit down with thought leaders, BCN certification holders, and industry experts who share their stories, their insights, and the challenges that shape their work. Our mission is simple: to amplify the voices of those making a difference every day, because your experiences drive progress, inspire others, and shape the future of nursing. We're here to honor that in every episode. Sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always valuable. This is BCN and Friends, and we're so glad you're here.
In this episode, we're joined by Jason Carter for a meaningful conversation about mental health resilience and sustaining purpose in the demanding world of healthcare. We discuss burnout, suicide prevention, leadership, and the power of positive energy, connection, and early intervention in helping clinicians thrive. Jason reminds us that caring for the caregiver is not a luxury but a responsibility. This episode is titled, Running on Purpose, Not Empty, Fueling Mental Health and Wellness on the Front Lines.
I'm Holly Briggs, a professional development specialist at BCEN and one of your hosts for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Dexter, our Director of Professional Development. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Holly.
It's great to have you with us. And in this episode, we're going to explore the journey of a nurse leader whose career spans military service, pre-hospital care, and emergency department leadership. He's bringing a powerful perspective on resilience, transition, and the realities of working in high-stress environments. Without further delay, Michael, could you please introduce us to our BCN friend, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Carter's journey into healthcare began with 6 years of service in the U.S. Navy as a hospital corpsman and surgical technologist, laying a strong foundation in clinical care and leadership. After transitioning to civilian life, he worked as a paramedic before advancing to nursing through a Paramedic-to-RN bridge program, and ultimately building expertise across emergency care and nursing informatics. For the past 7 years, he's served as a nurse manager, leading with a focus on quality, safety, and operational excellence. Jason earned his master's degree in 2017 and completed his doctorate of nursing practice in executive nurse leadership in June of 2026. He's especially passionate about addressing nurse and first responder suicide, working to educate healthcare professionals and leaders while advocating for better access to mental health resources. Jason, welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. And I will say, Michael just did a pretty high-level overview of your career journey. I guess you're going to have to break down some of that for us, but all in all, what kind of originally drew you into healthcare, and then what shaped your decision to pursue nursing specifically?
So growing up, one of my best friends became a paramedic, and I really had no idea what I wanted to do. So I was like, well, he's doing that and seems to like it, so I'm going to go that path. So I did a year of college and then ended up deciding to join the Navy. My first job in the Navy, I drove ships, and that was a lot of fun. And then after a year, I cross-rated and became a corpsman. So while I was in Corps school, getting my basic medical training, I was offered the opportunity to go what they call C school. And so while I was there, I selected that C school, and that was scrub tech. And so they sent me to San Diego to be trained as a scrub tech. While I was there, I had the option to go to Japan or go to another C school. So I took a second school and went to ears, nose, and throat and specialized in the operating room into ears, nose, and throat for the military, and then went up to Washington State where I finished out my time. So really, whenever I got out of the Navy in 2007, my intention was to come home and do paramedic school and just be a paramedic for the rest of my life. Nursing was never on my radar. I ended up in nursing because I had a cot that dropped as we were unloading it from an ambulance and pulled me over and hurt my back. And I was like, wow, paramedicine's a young man's profession. I should probably think about what I really want to do when I'm into my older years, because unloading patients from ambulances can be a bit rough on your body. So I went to nursing school, and unbeknownst to me, I found my passion. So if you would have told me in 2007 when I got out of the Navy that I was going to become a nurse, I would have told you were crazy. If you would have told me I was going to get a bachelor's, master's, and especially a doctorate, I would have really told you were crazy. And I found my passion. I started out in nursing informatics and loved it, and then, transitioned over to the ER, and I've just enjoyed it ever since. I couldn't imagine anything else I would want to do.
Well, I definitely understand what you're saying about the young man's profession. I also worked in EMS, and I remember later on being in the ED, and some EMS crews brought in the electronic stretchers that would go up and down with the push of a button. And I'm like, you guys don't even have a clue what I did for all those years working in EMS when it was just manual, pull the handle and hold it up and hope that the feet drop down the way that they need to, and definitely put a lot of strain and stress. And I think there's a lot of good overlap. I always tell people that pre-hospital taught me so much that helped me in nursing, and I'm sure you have some of that as well. And since you've been here and now have your doctorate and you've gone very deep into the nursing realm, what are some of the things that really helped you early on in your career, in your nursing career, that you learned either in the Navy or in pre-hospital care?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is being able to identify sick versus not sick very early on in my nursing career. As a paramedic, that's just something that is just drilled into you because you don't have anybody else there. It's you and your partner, and you have to rely on the knowledge you have to make the right decisions, right? And so, like, I think as nurses, one of the things that I've seen younger nurses kind of take a little bit longer to learn just because that's not what nursing school focuses on. It's just being able to identify that sick versus not sick, do that across the room assessment and be like, that's not right. We got to move a little bit quicker. And I truly do credit that to being a paramedic and having to walk into a house and you're looking around the house because you're making sure that the scene is truly safe for you, but you're also looking at what's going on with your patient. And I think that was a huge help for me in the ER whenever I would walk into a room and I'm doing that across the room assessment versus just walking in and starting to talk to the patient and trying to figure it out. And so I do think that crossover is huge. The flip side of that is how has nursing changed the way I paramedic? And I can definitely handle more than one patient at a time now a lot better. Because, as paramedics, we're used to our one patient we transport, and sometimes you might get a car that can have two or three, but rarely do you have more than one critical patient at a time. And so that's definitely helped me handle those situations a little bit better. And then just really kind of changed my outlook on how I take care of those patients. My questioning is a little bit different because I start thinking about what that ER nurse is going to need to know versus what I need to know as a paramedic. And so you kind of tend to kind of blend the two. And it's awesome to be able to do both and then see both. And then, when you go into the ER and you have all this information that they're not used to getting from a paramedic necessarily, and then they find out you're a nurse, they're like, oh, you're an ER nurse, and so you cheated us, and you got to, you knew the information we were going to ask right away, and so it's great. I was fortunate enough that the ambulance service that I've worked for most of my career is part of the hospital that I used to work at, and so like we were all one big family. When I wasn't on calls, I'd go hang out in the ER and talk to the nurses and get in their way and do paramedic things, and so it was a great time and honestly, it's probably what did help me decide to go to nursing school as well. Is just being able to interact with them and truly see what they do.
And what about on the other side of that as well with being a leader? And I'm sure you've hired or helped mentor people that are transitioning EMT to RN or paramedic to RN. You mentioned taking care of more than one patient, but what are some of the other things that you found as a valuable tool to help people that are going from the pre-hospital side into the hospital side in terms of ways that they can be successful?
But one of the big things I talk to them about is more of the socioeconomic piece of it and kind of, the healthcare disparities that we see a lot in the hospital. You see them in EMS, but then you see it a lot more because you're seeing also in the hospital, you also get to see those patients that come in the front door. It's not just all ambulances. I think we'd all love to work at an ER where every patient showed up through an ambulance in the back door and we just got to get to work, but that's not reality. And so just learning how to really have those conversations and understand the greater need. Some patients come in because there's a need that's not being met in their community. And so they're seeking help. And as a paramedic, there wasn't times that I really considered those type of things. Did you call 911 because you're hungry, because you couldn't pay a bill, or you're having whatever non-medical crisis, but you don't know who to go to? And in the hospital setting, we do see those people. And so My big advice to them is when you come in, make sure you're open-minded and understand that that person's crisis is their crisis. We have to respect that as nurses and as paramedics, and it doesn't matter what license you're working under. We need to help navigate that process. And then, the other part is learning your resources. As a paramedic, my resource was, well, let's just go to the hospital. And that's changing now because we're seeing a lot more on the pre-hospital side with community paramedicine. We're starting to see some nurses work pre-hospital with different departments around the country. Fire departments are hiring nurses to go out and see the patients that call a little bit more frequently and do those assessments. And so we're getting there on the pre-hospital side. But just one of the struggles I think that I've seen with some of the paramedics that I've mentored over the years that have become nurses is just learning to know, okay, let me get case management involved. Let me reach out to my manager, see what we can do for this situation or that situation, or when to get the chaplain involved, because as paramedics, we don't have those resources available to us.
You brought up some really great points that are going to segue perfectly into the next question I have for you. But one thing that really stood out in your response was talking about those factors outside of like injury and medical concerns, and how even in the ER, which is where my nursing career really happened, I didn't always understand impact of whether they had the finances to pay for things. Do they have supplies at home to take care of a wound? Like, I think in the beginning of my career, I did not understand, right? Because you just bring in this idea that like, oh, people are a lot like me. And that's just not true of every person that comes in, whether that be their educational level, whether that be their socioeconomic level, whether that be just their life experiences that got them to where they are coming in to see me. And it was always best, I learned fairly early on, just to not assume, to always ask the question, like, do you understand what you need to do to go home and do you have what you need? I think the one of the smartest things that I picked up as a young nurse was to just ask. And then, sometimes people would be like, of course I know what I'm doing. Of course I know how to clean a wound. I can put on a Band-Aid, but the truth of the matter is there would be people who'd be like, no, can you show me? Or I don't have this at home. And I'd be like, oh, okay, well, we can take care of that. But even further downstream, we didn't always see in the ER all of the different things that it took to get somebody back home and situated well. And until I had a broader understanding of like, hey, when a patient gets admitted, there's an entire process of getting them back home that sometimes is really complicated, depending on what home means and what home looks like. And again, I think when you start off as a new nurse, you're so kind of very focused and very like head in, and even if you came in with paramedic, like you kind of come in with this, get him to the hospital and everything will be fine. It's like, get him into the ER and everything's going to work out. And the truth of the matter is they may have come to the ER for something we can't solve right away. And it may take all of a variety of resources that have little to do with their physical needs and much more to do with like getting them hooked up with the right kind of wound care person or getting them tied into mental health resources. There's just that wide net that I didn't realize that we were always, we were supposed to catch people in. I thought it was much, much smaller of a net, but you got to learn quick. That's what I have to learn.
Right. And I love that you talk about like the mental health resources. That is one thing as a paramedic. I never truly acknowledged how lacking we are in mental health resources until I became an ER nurse and had to be that charge nurse that's calling every mental health facility in the state trying to get one person admitted. And I'm like, I have no beds, I have no beds, I have no beds. And, because I would pick them up as a paramedic and just take them to the hospital, not
Mhm.
understanding why I couldn't take them to the local psychiatric hospital, or why they couldn't just walk in there and say, hey, I want to be seen in triage, which they could. And then so many of them get sent to the hospital. And then here we are as nurses trying to find somewhere for these folks to go.
Yeah, it is super eye-opening. And I told you I was going to segue there, but just your service in the Navy, pre-hospital care, and then of course leading like nursing teams, how would you say all of those experience have shaped your perspective on mental health in high stress environments? Because I know you have a viewpoint on things, and I can't wait to let you kind of talk about this passion topic, but How do you feel like that kind of teed you up for where you are right now in your perspective?
It definitely changed my outlook on it, right? Like when I was a very young paramedic, I was a young and immature and 25-year-old kid who did not understand the mental health component of a suicide attempt and why somebody would try that. Because while at one point in my life I was there, I never made the attempt. I just had the thought, right? And so, like, where it really came out though is when I was in the Navy, my family suffered a loss and I was on the verge of getting in trouble. I mean, I was being very disrespectful to everybody in my clinic, including the physicians, which, by the way, physicians in the Navy are officers. So when you're enlisted, you probably should be nice to them. But I wasn't, because that's how I was dealing with my depression, right? Like most men deal with depression by acting out, and that's what I was doing. One of my doctors was like, "Hey, you're on the verge of going to a disciplinary review board, but I'm going to give you an out, and we're going to go up to psychiatric now." And I was like, okay. I really didn't, still, that didn't mean anything to me. I was like, "You're going to take me to a clinic. So what?" And it wasn't until I started doing therapy there, because, of course, she made me sit down and talk to a therapist. And at this point, I'm like, I can't get in trouble. Like, that costs you money in the Navy when you get in trouble. And I didn't make much to begin with. And so that was my first experience to psychiatric treatment. And I sat down with one of the psychiatrists and she and I talked for a while. And she's like, "Well, you're definitely suffering from depression, as you should be for what you've been through. So let's start you on some antidepressants." Then we started some, weekly one-on-one therapy and weekly group therapy, in which the clinic just always made sure I was available to go to it, right? Like it became a priority for everybody. And so that was my first experience. And then that was also my only experience for a very long time. And then when I got out of the military and I came home and I started working as a paramedic, that's when I realized that I was very spoiled in the Navy by, I had a psychiatric clinic 2 floors up from where my clinic was. I literally walked out of my clinic, hopped in an elevator, went up to that clinic. And in the civilian world, it's just not available. That's not an option. Or the people that want to go get therapy, they can't afford it, like, because it's expensive. And insurance isn't always the best at covering therapy, and EAPs cover, give you 10 visits type of thing. And so it's like, what do you do? And so really just kind of seeing it as a paramedic, and then even more so as a nurse. I've seen it a lot more as a nurse, the patients that check in and they have nowhere else to go. They have nobody else to reach out to. And the reality is when a patient checks into the ER, we have things that we're mandated to do that also kind of takes away a little bit of their dignity, which does not help their crisis. I mean, I personally do not want to sit in a hall bed wearing paper scrubs. I don't want to sit anywhere wearing paper scrubs. That does not feel good. That does not feel comfortable. And nothing tells everybody else that knows the secret of paper scrubs that there is a psych patient, then you're laying there in paper scrubs, right? And then whenever I went through my most recent loss of a friend who committed suicide, that really closed down psychiatric care for me, because it made me realize that there's such a stigma around psychiatric care and seeking care that we're not talking about it. We're professionals who see bad things and we don't talk about our mental health or encourage people to seek mental health treatment. We kind of feed that stigma, right? And so, like, one of the things that I've learned between the Navy, and even in the Navy, I was pretty open with people about, like, yeah, my little brother died and I have depression because of it, because that's normal. But even when I got out of the Navy and I was no longer working with my core group of friends, I didn't talk about it that much because I didn't want people to judge me. And so being an ER nurse and seeing the bad things, I've seen suicide in almost every age of somebody who could physically harm themselves to commit suicide. When it affected me personally is when it really hit. Knowing what resources are out there is important. And that's kind of where I've landed in my nursing career, is just making sure I know those resources so that I can get somebody help somewhere.
I think it's invaluable to have those options. And as you were talking, I was going through all these different scenarios in my mind as well about nursing in general. And you'd mentioned a friend of yours that committed suicide. And I think that it's a very tough situation for a lot of nurses who don't want to self-report because they're afraid that they may lose their license, or they may have some kind of stipulation placed on their license, which then equals their livelihood. And so a lot of things go unreported, in my opinion, in the nursing community because of the fact that you put so much time, effort, and work into getting a license that then could be jeopardized by things that are not even related to your day-to-day duties per se of nursing, but they are related to your actions as an individual. And you obviously are much more in tune with the statistics and the information than I am, but I know that there's research that shows that nurses have a higher risk of suicide and that there are, as you mentioned, more of a stigma around nurses that are going through this severe depression and things. So how can we as a nursing body, a nursing community, help better support our fellow nurses when we do feel like there is a potential issue, or if I'm a nurse manager and I have an employee working for me or with me that I'm concerned about, what can I do to better help that individual so that they don't feel like they could potentially lose their livelihood or have some other issue or make things worse for them if they seek treatment.
Right. So I like that you mentioned two important things. For one, the statistic. Nurses are 18% more likely to successfully commit suicide than any non-nurse mental health patient who attempts suicide. And then, licenses. A lot of people are very worried about their licenses because we've heard of the nurses who, quote, divert narcotics or divert medication from the Pyxis and commit suicide with them. The issue isn't the diversion there, right? But that's what the boards tend to go after them for. You divert narcotics, and they never get the mental health treatment that they need. As leaders, it's important that we know what's available to us to help our staff when they're feeling in this way. And so, like, first and foremost, we got to break the stigma. And I think anybody who has ever spent more than 15, 20 minutes with me and talked about suicide or mental health knows that I am very happy to talk about it. And I'll go into more details than most people probably care to know. But we've got to break that stigma. And one of the things that I think is a miss is that some organizations, their thought process of like, how do we support our staff whenever they've gone through a traumatic event or something really bad, is they bring a cart of food, they order pizza, they send the chaplain down. And those things are great, but anybody that knows a good ER nurse knows one thing. We don't turn down food, whether we're sad or not. If you bring food in the department, we're going to eat it. But we can't eat our feelings away, right? Like, yeah, that's great. It's nice to have those comfort foods, but it's not going to fix the fact that I am having a mental health crisis, or I just got done coding that 2-year-old that was a traumatic arrest because they weren't in a car seat. We see bad things as nurses, and we have to acknowledge that to take care of our peers. We have to be willing to say to our colleague, I hear what you're saying, and I'm worried about you. And we also have to know that when our colleagues say that, they mean it with love. It's an act of kindness. It's an olive branch that they're extending out there. It's not, oh well, Michael's driving me crazy today, so let me make this comment about him so he can be EOD'd and put his license online. I've never worked with a nurse or met a nurse or anybody who would do something like that. It's about getting each other help, and we have to be willing to do it. And I think part of the reason why, as nurses, especially ER nurses, we struggle at asking for help and admitting when we're in crisis is we know what's going to happen to us. I know that if I call Holly and say, hey girl, I'm really suicidal right now. I have a plan, all the right things. Holly's going to come pick me up and she's going to take me to a hospital and I'm going to get paper scrubs and I'm going to sit there for God knows how long waiting for placement. It could be the hospital I work at, which, a lot of people don't want to go to the hospital they work at for something like that. I understand. And so we don't speak up because we know what's going to happen. We know the reality. We know the process. And so I think just as leaders, you have to know what your organizations are in your community. You have to know what your resources are. I'm very fortunate where I currently live in Oklahoma. There is a organization that's local to the Oklahoma City metro area that they focus on first responder mental health. That is their goal. And you're starting to see more and more organizations out there. We just have to find them and we need to have those resources. And it's not my place as a leader, as a mentor, as a friend, as a colleague to tell anybody which organization they should use or where they should go. It's my place to say, we need to get you help. And that's what breaks the stigma. So it's important that a nurse leader knows. And whenever I I do a presentation on nurse suicide. Whenever I do it, I always tell people I might not know your area, but I'll find your resources. If you need help, call me, send me an email, get in touch with me somehow, and let's find the resources in your area.
Yeah. So many of the things that you just said, I'm like, oh, that's so good to hear. It's so true of experiential knowledge that you have, but also it's just real. Like it's just truly what happens both in pre-hospital, both in the hospital, and healthcare in general. I think there's definitely an avoidance of conversations, maybe because I don't want to be the one who say we don't like to talk about our feelings, but we don't really like to talk about our feelings. And some of that is the stigma of that impenetrable, super professional, hyper knowledgeable expert that we are required to be at the bedside, right? Like we are supposed to show up. This emergency is not my emergency. I'm supposed to kind of get in there, 10 man it out and like handle business, right? And while, yes, I don't think the first thing you should do when somebody's bleeding out in front of you is be like, hey, so how are you feeling about this? No, we know how they're feeling about it. They're feeling mostly dead. And so, yes, for patients, I agree. We do have to kind of be on our A game and be able to treat physical injury, but not to the extent that we deny that there is a psychosocial aspect to all care given in the hospital. We are working with humans, humans with feelings, humans with emotions, and we are humans with feelings and emotions. And so, of course, like the collision course of us meeting someone in the hospital is we're both going to come with feelings and emotions, and we're going to bring our experiences, what's going on at home, what's happening in our lives. Like they will spill into your work despite how I kind of was indoctrinated when I first started in nursing. It was kind of like, look, you check your family, your life, anything outside the hospital, you check it at the door and you pick it up when you leave. And like that mentality worked for about 3 years. And then I was like, this is nuts. I can't do this anymore. Because
Right.
there was spillover on both sides, right?
Yeah, and something we see, especially in the ER, is psychiatric patients will come in and they'll be in crisis. And I can't tell you the number of times I've heard nurses make comments, paramedics, firefighters, police officers. Every profession we've heard make comments, and you don't know how your comment might affect your colleague sitting next to you. And so if you're making some negative comment about another suicide patient coming in or whatever that negative comment might be, and the person sitting next to you is literally about to tell you how they're having a hard time with a case they just had and mentally they're not right, that person will never come to you after that. So I think we have to hold each other accountable to that regard as well. I have no problem when I'm at any of my jobs speaking up and saying, what you just said is not cool and you should not say it because I know a firefighter who's committed suicide. I know a paramedic who's committed suicide. I know a nurse. I know a police officer. And those are people that I knew. It's not I know of them. No, I knew them. I knew them by name. And so that is hard, and we have to break the stigma. And you do that by acknowledging first off that mental health disease is real. It is very real, and ironically enough, mental health disease does not care about your socioeconomic status. It does not care about what you do for a living. It does not care who you're married to. It doesn't care about anything because you don't know what is going to get each individual person to that point.
I had this conversation with someone the other day, and it was how I would know things about my coworkers, but there was one person I did not know their true first name. Like, like I knew like how they like their coffee. I knew that they would always have a pair of scissors on them, but for a long time, I didn't know their first real name. I only knew them by their nickname. And so I'm like, the level of almost like an intimacy that you get to with your colleagues because you kind of bond together over these intense situations, these very high pressure situations, and you create these bonds. And then sometimes that's all you leave them at. Like, unless you really truly ask the questions of getting to know people and because you care about them, right? And I think that as a profession, we need to do a better job of truly caring enough about the person who's working next to us and doing all these hard things with us to get to know them a little bit better outside of the how do you like your coffee, getting to hear like what's going on in their life outside of the hospital. And I know it might be, not the easiest conversations to have or like, navigating that socially, but the idea is if you truly care enough to get to know someone more than just the colleague they are at the bedside, then when they're going through something really hard and I were to ask, like, hey, how are you really doing? If I have no relationship with you, if I have no like camaraderie with you on a personal level, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to tell me. Like, you're you might trust me to put an 18 in a granny, but you're not going to trust me with what's secretly probably eating you up inside. So, do you have any advice for that about maybe how to broach those hard conversations or how to build, kind of like scaffold up to those conversations?
Yeah, so one of the things I love to do when I talk to people is what do you do when you're not at work? And a lot of people take that question as that's just Jason trying to get to know me, like he's filling me out. Actually, what I'm really doing is assessing what you're doing to let go of all the bad stuff that we see every day. What is it that you do to decompress? What is it that you do to unsee what you've seen, right? Like our brains, I don't think for 1 minute our brains are designed and were made for us to see some of the things that we do see in the emergency department. And so I think that having an outlet's important. And there's been a few people who are like, just kind of hang out. Yeah, but what are you doing? Are you going to a beach? Are you going to a pool? Are you like I go mountain biking? That's my thing. Or you go hunting, you go fishing, you do whatever, but have something that is not medicine related that gives you joy and what lets you go. And so I think that we need to do a better job at getting to know our coworkers in that manner. And listen, there are some people out there that I've learned that when they're at work and they're not going to talk to you about their personal life, no way, shape, or form. And that's okay. But you have to be able to recognize when that person's not right, when something's not like they're not their normal, and do those check-ins with them. And you don't have to be all obvious. I don't have to walk up to be like, hey, Hell, I just wanted to check on your mental health and see how you're doing. Like, you don't have to be so obvious, but you can do that nonchalant check-in and just be like, how are things going, or what success do you have for the week, or get them thinking about something positive and see if you can perk them up a little bit. But you're right, we have got to do a better job at getting to know our peers. And I think that in a smaller hospital, we find that easier, like in our community-based hospitals. But then you go to work at like an academic medical center where you might be one of 200 plus nurses working in that ER. And you're like, I'm never going to learn all my colleagues' names. You just have to get to know people when you work with them for that day and try to talk to them. And I think the biggest way to help break that ice is always offering to help them with their patient care. Nobody can refuse to talk to you after you've offered to help them clean up that patient or, the things that we all hate doing as nurses. When you offer to be their teammate to help out, they seem to start talking to you pretty openly after that because you went and did this horrible thing with me, the bed bug patient. We all have our vice. And so when you help each other out, you tend to start talking more. And I think that's an opportunity that we need to take more advantage of and just round on each other. And leaders need to round on their staff every day. It can't be just a once or twice a week. It's every day. One of the things I do is I try to be at work between 6 and 6:30 so I can go and round on my night shift just to, if nothing else, so they know what I look like and they have an opportunity to have my ear, and I think that's important to people. I think they need to feel supported. Last month, I had the privilege to do my suicide presentation for our nurse residents at my organization. And, I've had a couple check in with me that not only work alongside me, but they just see me in the hallway and they're like, hey, I saw your presentation and you don't know how important that was. Or the people afterwards that stop and talk to me. For whatever reason, when I present, people like to put me right before lunch. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I always seem to be around lunch. And so I try not to take up too much of the time because I don't want to be the guy that stands between anybody and their next meal. But they come up and they give up some of their lunch to talk to me and tell me how important it is that they heard that and how I touched them. And it's like, if a leader's not willing to sit down and have that conversation with their staff, then they got to reevaluate what they're doing. Because if not us, then who?
Great points. And Jason, you have a lot of excellent knowledge on the topic that I can certainly see why I was kind of laughing when you said that because I was thinking he would be a good one for around a break where people could listen to his presentation and then come talk to him. And as I was thinking that, you were like, always put me at lunch. And anyways, it's funny, but it's also like it makes a lot of sense. You want to give people plenty of time to interact and ask questions and certainly bring stories that they have or question scenarios they have to you, and especially with all the passion you have for the topic. So I certainly understand that component of it as well. But you mentioned earlier, I want to jump back. You mentioned earlier there was a physician that basically said, I'm going to give you an out with being reprimanded or not. You also talked about, a friend of yours that committed suicide. And you've mentioned a varying amount of people that have in some way impacted you in a very large way. And whether it's one of them or whether it's somebody completely different you haven't mentioned, or maybe it's more of a moment or a patient or something. We always like to ask guests on the show if there is a particular moment or person in your career where you look at back and you go, well, that really changed who I am. That really impacted me as either an individual, a professional, or both.
Yeah, so I actually have two people that come to mind when I think about this. One of them is that doctor from the Navy, Dr. Christina Hart. She truly believed in every one of us that worked in the clinic with her. And the worst thing you could ever say to her was, I don't know how to do that, or I don't want to do that. Because inevitably you were going to learn and you were going to do it. She really invested a lot of time. I was very fortunate in my clinic that all of our doctors spent a lot of time like investing in us, teaching us. I mean, if she had her way, we would have all been little doctors just following her around and learn how to do the surgeries ourselves. And she really pushed me to go back to school, like while I was still in the Navy, like encouraged me to get my basics and all that. Another person, her name's Denise Harris, and she was a teacher I had in high school. I think it was my sophomore year, junior year of high school. They decided to tell me that I had a learning disability, and I'm like, well, I've made it this far just fine and dandy, but and she's the one who like it really kind of crushed my soul, right? Like I'm this 16-year-old kid who, again, something with a stigma around it. And she was like, don't let this stop who you want to be. And so I used to tell her all the time that I was going to be a doctor. I didn't know like I wasn't going to truly be a medical doctor, but here we are. So I actually sent her a message the other day on Facebook and was like, hey, I'm a doctor 25, 26 years later. And I still keep in touch with both of those women. And they've always been supportive. And even though you lose touch with people throughout life, and I might go a year or two without reaching out to either one of them, they're just both two people that I've reached out to periodically through life to just check in. And so those two women definitely have been kind of my big push in life. And then of course, my folks and some of my best friends always encourage me. And then people who just tell me that I'm crazy because I keep going back to school. Dr. Hart and Miss Harris have always really just kind of pushed me.
I love hearing the answers to this question. Like it makes me so happy to hear of the people who kind of acted like building blocks to help you get to that next place and that next place. And, you look back on your life and your career and you're like, man, I don't know how I got here. And then the more you look at it, you realize it was just these little steps, these little lifts. And before you knew it, years go by and I'm here. And the impact that people have, their words, their actions, their beliefs, and they see potential in you and they encourage it. You just never know how that moment or those comments will leave a lasting impression. I'm sure that neither one of those ladies probably realized the huge impact they had on your life in the time they spent with you. They probably didn't go, oh, Jason's definitely going to call me as a doctor in a few, years. And,
Right.
but they just thought, I think he can really do whatever he wants to do. And because they believed in you, it came to pass that you traveled that road to get here. And not to take away from the personal effort and energy and time it takes to accomplish, all the things that you've accomplished. But a lot of times in life, you would have never dreamed to have that big of a dream if somebody hadn't said, I think you can do it. Yeah, I
Right,
think you can do it.
exactly. And you don't realize how many people on your path just they encourage you without you really knowing it until you stop and think. I mean, it's the peers that I've had during while I've been in school who are just like, "Are you ever going to be done?" They make fun of me because now I'm like, "I'm done. I got my doctorate. I'm done." They're like, "Whatever. You're going back for something. It's you. You will go for something. We know it." But it's because they know that you have that desire to continue to learn and to improve yourself and so it's been great. I've definitely been fortunate that friends who even might not agree with the decision that I'm making are still like, all right, well, if anybody's going to do it, it's you. It's been an amazing journey and it's been a great career for me so far.
You still got plenty of time, man. Who knows what else you're gonna do? You'll have to let us know if you go back to school. What's the next option, right?
Right. Like right now, there are no school options for me for a little while. None, not at zilch. I need to
Okay.
rest. My brain needs to rest.
You know what? That directly leads into our rapid fire questions. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. So, Jason, we asked these questions so we could just get to know you a little bit better as a person. So, what would you be doing if you were not in your current role? Now, I would also like to say it can't be any of the other ones you've tried too. Like, it's going to have to be something new and different that you were like, I would have always liked to try this.
So I've actually thought about what would I do if I quit nursing today, and an engineer comes to mind quite a bit when I think on that. I don't know why. Um,
I
so I
feel like it's
definitely
because you know it would be a lot more school. Like that's why I feel like you're like, you know what? Engineer. That's like what, a good 6 to 8 years? Like, yeah.
right,
More school, more certifications. Why not?
yeah. And then when I got out of the Navy, I actually looked at becoming a state trooper, and then I looked at how much they made annually because it's public, and so I was like, no thanks, I'll go to college.
I know. I just think any profession where like weapons and possibly being severely injured on your, I feel like those should be higher paying jobs. I feel like if your life is risked, like if it's like one of those things every time you go to work, you may or may not come back. I feel like we should pay more for those people. No
I
one's
agree.
ever no one's ever asked me to like scale the pay for these particular jobs, but if they did, I'd be like more. Whatever they're getting,
Right.
they need more. So, yeah, if anybody's listening who can make that happen, we want more money for these people. Okay, we're gonna talk about some favorites. What's your favorite book, or maybe a quote that really inspires you?
So my favorite book is actually The Magic Bus by John Gordon. I read it at least once a year. I usually listen to it on a flight because the audio version is only about like 2 hours long. It's a short book, but it talks about, to quickly summarize it, he goes out to work one day and has a flat tire and needs to take his wife's car, but she's got things to do. She's like, nope, you get to ride the bus. And he tried to get on the bus and be the Debbie Downer CEO guy that just, don't talk to me. And the bus driver wasn't having it. So it's such an inspirational book and it really helps ground me back whenever I need it.
I love a book that you can read more than once. I mean, don't get me wrong, there have been tons of books that I've read where I've only read it once and I was like, I'm good. And then there are just those books that I'm like, I will own this book forever. I will read it again and again and again. And especially those books that just inspire you to your point, like ground you again and remind you of the things that you're going to be intentional about. So, oh, love that. All right, favorite movie, TV show, binge-worthy series. We're always open to suggestions.
So my TV show that I watch nonstop is Big Bang Theory because it's just dumb comedy. Like it's hilarious. How could you not love it? And then I would say for a binge-worthy show that I've been watching, The Testament, because that's the second round of Handmaid's Tale, which is kind of creepy. And yeah, so that's been my latest one.
I have some friends who are definitely on The Handmaid's Tale and they summarize it for me because I'm like, I don't know if I can, I don't know. I don't know. Ugh.
You gotta get to like the third episode, and then you'll be hooked. The third or fourth episode of the first season, you'll be in.
You know what? I've also heard that as well. But to your point about The Big Bang Theory, it is one of those shows that, especially when I'm traveling, I find it so comforting. And the fact that they have it on for like 3 hour blocks on certain channels, it just makes me so happy because I always feel like if I can't find Law and Order SVU and solve a crime, then I can find Big Bang Theory and just be
Right.
comforted by the relationships of these people. So yeah,
And depending on your service, you can watch the East Coast feed and then turn around when it's over and watch the West Coast feed. It's awesome.
it just makes me feel like at home. I don't even have to know what's going on, but I see it. I'm like, oh, we are home. All right. Favorite song, musical artist, something that can just instantly move you.
I don't know that I have one.
Is there like a
It's
genre of music that you listen to at all? Like if you had to if we turned on your car, would it be,
I talk on the phone. When I'm driving, I'm always on the phone with somebody.
I'm not gonna lie, there are times in my life when I'm like, I know I have like an hour and a half drive and I need to catch up with this particular person. I like schedule our phone calls for the time that I'm gonna be in the car.
Like Bluetooth in your car has ruined the radio for me. I rarely listen to it. I'm usually on the phone with somebody.
It is a game changer. If you'd have asked me 10 years ago if I would use that, I would be like, no. But just like a heated steering wheel, once you have it, Bluetooth, you're like, I'm ruined for not having that in my car.
Right.
So,
But I still pay for satellite radio, even though I never listen to it.
okay. He's like, I gotta have this one thing that I'm never gonna listen to. Perfect. All right. You kind of touched on this earlier, but I do want to ask, do you have like a self-care go-to or way that helps you reset, especially in the midst of all that you're doing? I mean, I know you just finished school and work life, family life, all of the things. But what do you do and how often do you do it that helps you reset?
Right. So yeah, so it actually depends on the time of year. So there's a very good reason for why I say that. I don't like to mountain bike when it's 110 degrees in Oklahoma. That's you. I mean, you sweat a lot if you're into that, but yeah, I'm good. If it's early mornings in the summer, I'll go ride my bike some. I enjoy just, also grabbing my dog and go for a nice walk. She's a little dachshund, so she's not willing to walk far, but she'll give me a couple laps around the neighborhood. And then deer season's during Thanksgiving, and that's something my dad and I have done together every year for the vast majority of my life. And so we go out into the woods every day for 2 weeks and relax. And it's funny because a lot of my friends are like, do you realize how boring that is? But there's just something about sitting in my deer stand, staring at trees with nothing happening, watching birds fly around, that you relax, you chill. Like we always talk about how the minute we pull onto the farm, it's like stress relief. And so we do that. We start getting ready for that usually in July and August and start getting food out because you got to get them to come visit you. And if I'm just having a really bad week, I joke that therapy is one of my hobbies. So I will call up a friend of mine that he and his wife are big in the mental health community and be like, let's talk about randomness. So yeah, it's great. I will tell you, I was joking last weekend that I paid my therapist just to listen to me talk about whatever that has nothing that she's going to help me work through. But so that helps. I think self-care is important. It's very important. I mean, there's the obvious things everybody always talks about, go work out, go for a walk, those type of things. But you really got to find what your niche is. What does self-care look like for you? For some people, it's going to sit at a restaurant by themselves. I can't do that, but just having some alone time. Some people, it truly is just laying in bed for 2 days and getting some sleep because they're behind on sleep, and that's okay too. But it is something that's important. It's very near and dear to me that I always take care of myself.
I 100% agree that it is. What is your self-care? It might look different than mine, but what is it for you? And being intentional, putting it on your calendar, scheduling it. If you can make it a daily habit, great. If it's something that can't be every day, but you can get it on your schedule, get it on your calendar, and be intentional about it, because that's really the only way that busy people take time to do things that are important is if it's on your calendar, if it's scheduled, if you prioritize it, then you'll do it. So thank you for sharing all of that. If someone wanted to reach out to you, what social media platform could they do that on?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. That's the easiest place to find me. I am on Facebook as well, but if you can't tell by my name, I have a very common name. And so it's usually easier to find me on LinkedIn. And so, yeah, just reach out to me anytime on Facebook if you want to talk, if you need help finding resources, if you, whatever. I mean, just reach out and I'm here for it.
Well, we appreciate you sharing that, Jason, and it's been great getting to know you more and hear more of your story. And certainly want to thank you for not only your service to the country and your military service, but your service to the nursing community and all that you've done to help support nurses through your education and your advocacy and the many things that you're doing on a routine, regular basis. It's not just like a firework where it's one and done, but you're continuing to constantly provide this education, the references, resources to so many people. And it's very, very much needed in the nursing community, and it's very appreciated. And we appreciate you taking the time today to sit down and talk with us and share some of this passion you have for these different topics. It's been really, really wonderful. So thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you guys for the invite. It was very important to me. I've been talking about it all week to everybody at work, so they've had to hear all about it. And I'm excited to have this opportunity in this forum to get the awareness out there and do my part to break the stigma around mental health disease, especially in healthcare.
Well, we appreciate that. And I want to take this time to thank Jason for joining us for this episode. Jason, thank you for sharing your journey, your insights with us today, your perspective on transitioning from paramedic to nurse leader, and the lessons drawn from military and frontline care, bringing incredible depth to this conversation. Your willingness to speak openly about mental health and the suicide risk and the need for better support systems for nurses and first responders is both impactful and necessary. And we're truly grateful for your voice in this space. That's a wrap for this episode of Be Seen and Friends. Don't miss what's next. You can subscribe, share, and join the conversation by scanning the QR code for learn updates in this episode blog. If you got a topic you'd like us to cover, drop us a line at bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs with Michael Dexter, and we're proud to celebrate your dedication to nursing across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected. We are out.